Ladies and gentlemen, life often brings us through trials that test our strength, our faith, and our very sense of self. One of the most challenging experiences a person can endure is being entangled in a narcissistic relationship. A connection that drains, manipulates, and distorts the very essence of who we are. But let me remind you today, God does not leave his children in the ruins of broken relationships. Instead, he restores, he reveals, and he redirects. God will renew and redirect your life. He does not rescue you from something without leading you towards something greater. Where there was confusion, he will bring direction. Where there was darkness, he will shine his light. He will open doors to healthier relationships, opportunities for self-discovery and a deeper connection with him. The enemy may have tried to destroy you through that toxic relationship, but God will use it to elevate you. So, to those who have walked this difficult road, take heart. The pain was not your ending. It was merely a passageway to your breakthrough. God is working even now, healing, revealing, and setting you on a new course. And when God restores, he does not give back what was lost. He gives back something greater. A narcissistic relationship can leave behind an invisible but deeply felt weight, one that burdens the heart, mind, and soul. It is a relationship that drains, confuses, and ultimately wounds the very essence of a person. However, while such an experience can feel like an emotional and spiritual wreckage, it is crucial to understand that God is in the business of healing and restoration. He does not leave his children broken. Instead, he mends, strengthens, and brings new life to what seemed lost. To fully grasp the depth of God's healing, we must first acknowledge the extent of the wounds caused by a narcissistic relationship. These wounds are not merely physical, they are deeply emotional, psychological, and spiritual. A person emerging from such a relationship may struggle with self-worth, questioning whether they were ever truly loved or valued. They may feel exhausted, drained from constant emotional battles, and the burden of pleasing someone who never seems satisfied. The manipulation and gaslighting often associated with narcissistic relationships create confusion, making it difficult for a person to trust their own judgment. Over time, this leads to a fractured identity, where the victim no longer recognizes who they once were. Spiritually, many struggle with feelings of abandonment, wondering where God was in the midst of their suffering. Throughout Scripture, God is described as a healer, one who binds up the brokenhearted and restores the soul. Psalm 147:3 says he heals the brokenhearted and binds up their wounds. This is not just a poetic expression, it is a divine truth. God does not ignore the pain of his children. Instead, he steps into their suffering, offering comfort, renewal, and peace. The healing process does not happen overnight. Just as physical wounds take time to mend, so do emotional and spiritual wounds. But God works in layers, gently peeling back the pain, the doubts, and the insecurities, replacing them with his truth. Where the narcissist spoke words of destruction, God speaks words of life. Where the narcissist tore down, God builds up. Where trust was shattered, God restores confidence in his unwavering love. One of the most devastating effects of a narcissistic relationship is the erosion of identity. Victims often lose themselves, molding their personalities, desires, and emotions to fit the expectations of the narcissist. They may become unrecognizable to themselves, unsure of who they were before the relationship. But here is the truth. God never intended for anyone to live in the shadow of someone else's manipulation. His plan has always been for each person to walk in the fullness of their God-given identity. He restores not only the heart, but also the mind. He reminds his children that they were created with purpose, that their worth is not dependent on another person's approval, and that they are deeply loved just as they are. Isaiah 61:3 declares that God gives a crown of beauty instead of ashes, the oil of joy instead of mourning, and a garment of praise instead of a spirit of despair. This is the essence of his restoration. He takes what was broken, breathes life into it, and makes it whole again. True healing is not just about moving on, it is about finding peace. One of the greatest gifts God gives to those who have suffered is his peace. A peace that surpasses all understanding. This peace is not dependent on circumstances, but comes from knowing that he is in control. When emerging from a narcissistic relationship, the mind often replays painful memories, questions what went wrong, and wrestles with self-doubt. But God quiets these storms. He speaks stillness into the chaos, reassuring his children that they are safe in his hands. Through prayer, reflection, and time spent in his presence, he replaces the anxiety with calmness, the fear with faith, and the heartbreak with hope. The wounds that once seemed unbearable begin to close, leaving behind scars not as marks of defeat, but as testimonies of survival and divine restoration. God's healing is not just about recovery, it is about renewal. He does not just mend the wounds and send his children back into life unchanged. Instead, he strengthens them, equips them, and fills them with new wisdom and discernment. He restores the joy that was lost, the faith that was shaken, and the purpose that was clouded. If you have walked through the darkness of a narcissistic relationship, know this: you are not beyond repair. You are not too broken for God to heal. His love is greater than any manipulation. His truth is stronger than any lie, and his restoration is more powerful than any destruction caused by another person. Healing is a journey, but you do not walk it alone. God walks beside you, guiding you toward wholeness, peace, and a future filled with his love. One of the most painful aspects of a narcissistic relationship is the cloud of confusion it creates. Victims are often left feeling lost, unsure of what was real, and struggling to piece together their experiences. The manipulative nature of a narcissist distorts reality, making it difficult to see the truth while in the relationship. However, God is a God of truth, and one of the greatest gifts he gives after such an experience is revelation and clarity. He does not leave his children in the dark. Instead, he removes the veil, exposing what was hidden and revealing a deeper understanding of the past, present, and future. A narcissistic relationship thrives on deception. Manipulation, gaslighting, and emotional exploitation are tools used to keep the victim uncertain and dependent. Over time, this creates a mental and emotional fog, making it difficult to distinguish truth from lies. The person involved in such a relationship may question their own judgment, feel responsible for the narcissist's behavior, or even believe they were the problem. This confusion is intentional. A narcissist does not want their victim to see clearly, because clarity leads to freedom. The longer a person remains in a state of uncertainty, the easier it is for the narcissist to maintain control. But while the enemy seeks to keep people in confusion, God is a God of light and revelation. He does not leave his children trapped in lies, but instead brings truth into focus. In John 8:32, the Bible states, "Then you will know the truth, and the truth will set you free." This truth is not just about recognizing the narcissist's manipulation. It is about understanding deeper spiritual lessons. When God reveals the truth, he does so in layers. He shows not only what was wrong in the relationship, but also why it happened, what lessons can be learned, and how he plans to use it for good. At first, this revelation may be painful. Seeing the full extent of the deception, betrayal, and manipulation can be overwhelming. But this is an essential part of healing. The truth is necessary for breaking free from the emotional hold of the past. Without it, a person may continue to struggle with self-doubt, unresolved emotions, and unhealthy patterns in future relationships. God's revelation also extends beyond just seeing the narcissist's behavior. It involves self-discovery. Many who leave a narcissistic relationship realize that they had ignored warning signs, suppressed their own needs, or tolerated mistreatment far longer than they should have. While this realization can be difficult, it is ultimately empowering. It allows the person to grow in wisdom, set stronger boundaries, and develop a deeper sense of self-worth. When emerging from a narcissistic relationship, it is common to ask, why did this happen? Many struggle to understand why God allowed them to go through such pain. In these moments, God provides clarity not only about the past, but also about his purpose. Romans 8:28 reminds us, "And we know that in all things God works for the good of those who love him, who have been called according to his purpose." This does not mean that God caused the suffering, but rather that he can use it for something greater. He can turn pain into wisdom, brokenness into strength, and confusion into clarity. With time, many people look back and see that the experience, while painful, was a turning point in their spiritual and emotional growth. They recognize that God used the situation to reveal weaknesses that needed to be strengthened, patterns that needed to be broken, and lessons that would prepare them for healthier relationships in the future. One of the most significant gifts God gives after a narcissistic relationship is the gift of discernment. When someone has been through manipulation and deception, they become more attuned to red flags and warning signs in future interactions. What once seemed normal or acceptable is now clearly recognizable as toxic behavior. God sharpens discernment so that his children do not fall into the same traps again. He teaches them to trust their instincts, listen to his guidance, and walk in wisdom. Proverbs 3:5-6 states, "Trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways submit to him, and he will make your paths straight." This means that even when things do not make sense at first, God is always leading his people toward clarity and truth. Through discernment, a person not only learns to recognize unhealthy relationships, but also becomes more intentional about the people they allow into their lives. They develop a deeper understanding of their worth and refuse to accept less than what God intends for them. Revelation and clarity do not just apply to past relationships. They shape the way a person moves forward. Once God has revealed the truth and given clarity, there is a newfound sense of freedom. The weight of confusion is lifted, and life is seen through a new lens. No longer does the past define the future. Instead of dwelling on regret or bitterness, a person is able to step into the next chapter of their life with confidence and purpose. They understand that the relationship was not a punishment, but rather a lesson that shaped them into someone wiser and stronger. Most importantly, clarity brings peace. When a person knows the truth, they no longer feel the need to question. revisit, or seek validation from the one who hurt them. They are free to move forward, knowing that God has already prepared something better for them. God's revelation and clarity are gifts that bring light after darkness. They allow a person to see not only what went wrong, but also how God is using it for good. Through his truth, wisdom, and discernment, he transforms pain into purpose, ensuring that his children walk forward with confidence, knowing that they are no longer trapped in confusion, but guided by his divine understanding. Emerging from a narcissistic relationship is like stepping out of a storm. The winds of manipulation have passed, the emotional chaos begins to settle, and what remains is a person who has been battered but not broken. The experience may have left scars, but scars do not signify defeat. They are proof of survival, and while the enemy may have tried to use that relationship to destroy, God uses it for transformation. One of the greatest things God does after a narcissistic relationship is bring renewal and redirection. He does not simply restore what was lost. He leads his children to something greater, something stronger, and something aligned with his divine purpose. A narcissistic relationship drains more than just emotions. It drains identity, self-worth, and purpose. Many who leave such a relationship feel empty, as though their very essence was taken from them. This is because narcissists thrive on control, molding their victims into versions of themselves that fit their own selfish desires. Over time, the victim's dreams, passions, and even their faith can become suppressed. But God is a God of renewal. Isaiah 43:19 says, "See, I am doing a new thing. Now it springs up. Do you not perceive it? I am making a way in the wilderness and streams in the wasteland." This means that no matter how broken a person may feel after the relationship, God is already preparing something new within them. Renewal begins from the inside out. It is not just about healing from the pain. It is about rediscovering who God created a person to be. The toxic words spoken by the narcissist are replaced with God's truth. The lies about worthlessness, inadequacy, and failure are removed. Once renewal begins, God does not leave his child in the same place. He redirects them, he shifts their path, guiding them away from what was toxic and leading them toward a future filled with purpose and peace. After experiencing emotional and psychological manipulation, many people struggle with trusting again. But God does not just remove toxic relationships, he teaches discernment for the future. He opens eyes to recognize red flags, strengthens boundaries, and instills wisdom so that his children no longer settle for anything less than his best. Through this redirection, he leads them into relationships that are healthy, uplifting, and centered in love rather than control. Many people lose their sense of purpose in a narcissistic relationship. Their passions and dreams take a back seat to the demands of the narcissist. But when God brings redirection, he reignites those passions. He reminds his children of the talents, callings, and assignments he placed in them long before the narcissist ever entered their life. He sets them back on track, guiding them toward new opportunities, new goals, and new paths that align with their God-given purpose. A narcissistic relationship can leave a person feeling spiritually drained. The constant emotional battles may have made prayer seem distant and faith seem weak. But God uses this season of redirection to draw his children closer to him. He renews their strength, deepens their understanding of his word, and teaches them how to rely on him fully. This process creates a foundation that is no longer shaken by the opinions or actions of others. When God redirects, he does not just remove what was harmful. He provides something better, whether it is a new career path, new friendships, or even a new calling. He positions his children exactly where they need to be. What once seemed like a dead end becomes an open road, leading to blessings that were impossible to see while trapped in the toxicity of the past. One of the greatest challenges after a narcissistic relationship is letting go of what was. Many people struggle with the what-ifs and the memories of what they thought the relationship could have been, but redirection requires forward movement. God does not lead his children backward. He moves them ahead. Philippians 3:13-14 encourages, "Forgetting what is behind and straining toward what is ahead, I press on toward the goal to win the prize for which God has called me heavenward in Christ Jesus." Letting go does not mean forgetting the lessons learned. It means releasing the pain, the guilt, and the emotional ties that no longer serve God's purpose. It means stepping into a new season with boldness, trusting that what is ahead is far greater than what was left behind. God does not just redirect a person's path. He strengthens them for the journey ahead. Where there was once fear, he replaces it with courage. Where there was once self-doubt, he instills confidence. He equips his children with everything they need to walk forward without looking back. This newfound strength is not just for personal growth, it is for a greater purpose. Many who have walked through the pain of a narcissistic relationship later find themselves helping others who are going through the same struggles. They become voices of wisdom, encouragement, and testimony, proving that God truly brings beauty from ashes. Renewal and redirection are two of the most powerful ways God works after a narcissistic relationship. He does not allow pain to be wasted. Instead, he transforms it into a testimony of his faithfulness. He takes what was meant for harm and turns it into something that strengthens, uplifts, and leads to an even greater future. God's plans are always better than anything lost. And when he renews and redirects, he not only restores what was broken, he makes it stronger than before. When someone has endured a narcissistic relationship, they often walk away not only with deep emotional wounds, but also with a sense of injustice. The narcissist's deception, manipulation, and cruelty leave behind pain, and it can feel as though they walk away unscathed, while their victim is left to pick up the pieces. One of the most challenging aspects of healing is dealing with the unfairness of it all. The lies, the betrayal, and the lack of accountability. But while earthly justice may seem slow or even absent, God's justice is never delayed. He sees all, knows all, and promises to act. God's justice is not about revenge. It is about righteousness, truth, and restoring what was stolen. In time, he makes all things right, exposing darkness, lifting up the oppressed, and ensuring that no wrongdoing goes unnoticed. One of the most comforting truths for anyone who has suffered at the hands of a narcissist is that nothing is hidden from God. The narcissist may deceive others, manipulate situations, and even rewrite history to paint themselves as the victim, but they cannot deceive God. Hebrews 4:13 states, "Nothing in all creation is hidden from God's sight. Everything is uncovered and laid bare before the eyes of him to whom we must give account." Even when it seems like the narcissist has moved on without consequences, God is at work behind the scenes. He is not blind to the harm that was done, and he does not ignore injustice. His timing may not align with human expectations, but his justice is always perfect and complete. The Bible is filled with examples of God's justice prevailing over oppression. In Psalm 37, 7-9, we are reminded, "Be still before the Lord and wait patiently for him. Do not fret when people succeed in their ways, when they carry out their wicked schemes. Refrain from anger and turn from wrath. Do not fret. It leads only to evil. For those who are evil will be destroyed, but those who hope in the Lord will inherit the land." This verse reassures that even when it appears that evil is prospering, it is only temporary. God's justice is not always immediate, but it is always certain. Those who harm others, lie, and manipulate will eventually face the consequences of their actions, whether through personal downfall, exposure of their lies, or an internal emptiness that they can never escape. God ensures that no wrongdoing goes unaddressed. One of the greatest frustrations of dealing with a narcissist is their ability to twist the truth. They may smear their victim's reputation, portray themselves as the innocent party, and deceive others into believing their version of events. This can feel like a deep injustice, as victims are left without a voice, wondering if anyone will ever know the real story. But God is the ultimate revealer of truth. Luke 12:02-3 declares, "There is nothing concealed that will not be disclosed, or hidden that will not be made known. What you have said in the dark will be heard in the daylight, and what you have whispered in the ear in the inner rooms will be proclaimed from the roofs." God has a way of bringing hidden things to light. Sometimes this happens through unexpected revelations. Truth comes out in ways no one could have foreseen. Other times, people around the narcissist begin to see the reality for themselves. And most importantly, God ensures that the victim knows the truth about their own worth, restoring their sense of identity and dignity. A narcissistic relationship does not only cause emotional pain, it can take away years of joy, peace, and even purpose. Victims often feel like they have lost valuable time and opportunities. However, God is not only a God of justice, but also of restoration. This means that nothing lost is beyond God's power to return. He can restore emotional well-being, bring new and fulfilling relationships, and open doors that seemed forever closed. What was stolen is never permanently lost when placed in God's hands. One of the hardest things to do after experiencing injustice is to let go of the desire for personal vengeance. The human heart naturally wants to see the narcissist face consequences and feel the same pain they inflicted. However, carrying the weight of bitterness only prolongs the damage. This is why God calls his children to trust him with justice rather than taking matters into their own hands. God's justice is not just about consequences for the narcissist. It is also about victory for the one who was hurt. Divine justice ensures that the pain was not meaningless, that the suffering was not in vain, and that the victim walks away stronger, wiser, and free. In the end, God does not just bring justice. He brings renewal, peace, and a future filled with his promises. The story does not end in brokenness. It continues in redemption, proving that nothing is beyond the reach of his mighty hand. Coming out of a narcissistic relationship is not just about surviving. It is about healing, growing, and stepping into the greater plan that God has prepared. The pain may have been deep, the confusion overwhelming, and the sense of injustice unbearable, but God never abandons his children in their suffering. Instead, he uses what was meant for harm and turns it into a testimony of his faithfulness. Through revelation and clarity, he lifts the veil of deception, allowing truth to shine through and wisdom to take root. He replaces confusion with understanding, helping his children break free from the emotional and spiritual chains of the past. Through renewal and redirection, he does not just restore what was lost. He leads forward. He reshapes identity, reignites purpose, and positions his children on a path that is far greater than anything they could have imagined. He ensures that their story does not end in brokenness, but in strength, peace, and fulfillment. Through divine justice and vindication, he assures that no wrongdoing goes unnoticed. The narcissist may have walked away unpunished in the eyes of the world, but God sees all, knows all, and acts in his perfect time. His justice is not about revenge, but about truth prevailing, restoration happening, and his children being freed from the weight of injustice. God's plan is always greater than the pain that was endured. What seemed like a season of destruction was actually a season of transformation, preparing his children for something better. The journey after a narcissistic relationship is not just about moving on. It is about stepping into a life of wisdom, strength, and divine purpose. So, to anyone who has walked through this storm, know this: God has not forgotten you. He is working, healing, restoring, and leading you into a future filled with his goodness. What the enemy meant for evil, God is using for your victory.